Do I think they'll relax them? Oh, mate, there's so many things going on in the world of rugby. I can't see how they will relax them. I think, like Jim said, there's a big reset coming post-World Cup. And obviously there's conversations around Premiership rugby, and there's the funding deal going on at the minute, that negotiations with the RFU around how much they pay to get the release of England players. So I think we're so far down the line now that if you open up, and it's the big debate in New Zealand as well, isn't it, Andy Rowe, around letting more people do what Beauden Barrett's going to do and pick and choose when he plays for the All Blacks. I think it's really difficult to, when you're in a strong position in terms of the amount of players that you've got, to say, do you know what, off you go, play when you want. Unless there's a complete reset in world rugby around the international windows and release of players, etc., etc., I can't see it happening.
I think they'll have to. Not to be the opposite to you, going based on Jack Knowles' statement, and there's talk of him leaving Exeter, which effectively means he's leaving. And I saw something somewhere where he said everyone's talking about the salary cap stuff, and all the premierships are in the same position with their £5 million salary cap. Effectively, Exeter can't pay him the money that he wants, right?
Yeah.
So you think you've got Jack Knowles, Luke Cowan-Dickie and Sam Simmons, three of Exeter's, let's say it, three of their best players come through the system that need to go to France now to get paid, which is a big part of it because there's no room in the cap even if they were to stay. Because if it was of times gone by and if the salary cap was endless, anyone would want Luke Cowan-Dickie in the Prem, wouldn't they? Anyone would want him. Anyone would want Jack Knowles. I know he's had his injury problems and stuff like that. Sam Simmons exactly the same. So I think if you're England, if they go to New Zealand, which they won't, or Japan, which they won't unless it's a sabbatical, why would you not, if they're in the top 14 playing in France, getting paid a shitload of money? I know like the issues around in terms of going back during the fallow weeks, maybe they can have something in their contract where they don't play them if they're internationals, but I just think with the lay of the land now and the lack of investment, the lack of allowed and the want to increase the salary cap, which I'm all for. I know, Goody, we're very different on that, but you're telling me Jack Knowles now is probably not going to get what he's getting paid now by any other club in the Premiership. He'll probably get paid double or close to double going to France. That means you don't have a Jack Knowles to pick. I know that the back three are very good, but this could happen in a number of different positions. Maratoji, right? Say he wants to go, he gets offered £2 million to go to Racing, right? You're telling me you're not going to pick Maratoji?
Well, not at the minute, no. And that's why I'm saying, with how it sits at the minute with the international rules on player eligibility and when they get released and all stuff like that, unless there's a complete reset around the international window so they don't cross over. And this is the question for the clubs, right? And it's always that limit of how much is a player worth to the club. Let's take Jack Knowles, for example. You're looking at Jack Knowles and you're saying, how many games has he played for the club over the last 2 years? How much is he asking for? Is he going to be away with England a lot? So how many games will you get him for? And the state of the season, how convoluted it is around all the crossovers in the Premiership, you're then sort of saying, well, if we pay him, say we pay him 400 grand and we only get 15 games out of him a year, like how much value are we getting for that? Are we better off not going for someone else where we're going to get more value? And that's always the club's decision. And I completely agree when you're talking about you want to keep the big name players, but the players have also got to get realistic. And it's the hard thing when you're used to earning 300-400 grand a year, because that's what clubs could afford to pay you a few years ago. Well, they can't do it now. So you have to cut your cloth accordingly. And I completely agree. As a player, we had Gary Graham on here earlier, and Gary Graham said that he doesn't want to have relegation. He'd rather have food in his family's belly than get a load of people watching a game because it's a relegation battle. Well, what happens if those crowd levels drop off because there's no interest in it anymore because there's nothing? It's a dead rubber game. Well, off the back of that, you haven't got the money to pay the players again. So it's this horrible circle of...
Well, say it, Goody.
Say what?
Say the two words.
I'm not going to say central contracts, James.
Why?
I'm not going to say it.
You just said it.
I did, yeah. But it is, and that's the reset. If there is a reset and it comes to that, then central contracts, the RFU certainly wouldn't let them do it and go and play abroad because they'd have even less of a control over them. So it has to be something in World Rugby where all seasons are aligned, and then international windows are so clear that we've then got clarity on when players can be released. But until then, I can't see anything changing.
Pod.
Rugby pod.